You got the paper versions, all right.
Oh, you wanted to look?
I'll look at yours.
I don't have 7. Now I have 7. Great. So now I have a quorum. I can call the meeting to order. On the agenda tonight, we have 2 reserve fund transfers and a set of meeting minutes. I'm going to take the town council one first, just because that's the way I calculated it out. As everyone can see, our starting balance coming in tonight in the reserve fund is $166,630. The first reserve fund is for additional town council expenses related to arbitration and some conservation planning board issues. And it's for a transfer of $33,000 to the town council account. And after that, our balance will be simple math, $133,630. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the transfer of the $33,000. Larry? And Kathy. All right. Any questions? All right then, all those in favor? And that's 8-0. Okay. Just fill out the paperwork. All right, and the second one is a transfer of $1,291 to pay for the rest of the year for the building inspector. And that will give us $132,339 if approved.
What was that number again?
132,339. So any questions or comments? But Larry's going to approve the transfer. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jim Wadding?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with this, Robin, but when did the prior building inspector leave and the new building inspector come on board?
This is actually the result of the permit tech leaving, not the inspector. So this is the result of the clerk in that office, the permit tech leaving. She had been a longstanding employee. Oh, gosh, it was probably October timeframe. And we hired, my assistant Michelle moved over there. She was hired at a lower salary than the exiting permit tech, but the exiting permit tech did have a significant payout for vacation time.
So my only comment, and again, I don't have an issue with it, my own comment is timing. So back in October, we knew that we were going to run short on the salary account because there's a change in positions, and here we are in May, and now we're addressing this one. So I, probably would have been a little nicer to have more timely to when the event occurred, and we knew we were going to run short on the account versus waiting to the end of the year. That's my only comment there. But again, I don't have an issue with covering.
I apologize for that.
The account.
Do we usually accrue for these things? I mean, normally?
It's hard to know. It's hard to plan. A lot of times when there's a vacancy, the vacancy is long. When somebody leaves, there's a long enough gap before we hire that you have enough money. But in this case, because it was an internal hire and a transfer from department to department, that person didn't have to give 2 weeks' notice. The process moved a lot faster. So we didn't make up the difference. Sometimes we don't even run into this because we make up the difference.
And I wouldn't want to anticipate something, put money in there just in case. But if you do know that somebody's going to retire or we're in budget cycle, someone is planning on leaving during the year for whatever reason, we can
Yes.
factor that into that department's budget for the new year. But anticipate
Retirements are a little easier to sort of get a sense that someone might. They sometimes will give us 6 months to a year's notice that they might, but a departure is a little harder.
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
That's all
So
I
I have
have.
no problems. I have a first and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's 8-0. Great. So moving past the reserve fund transfers, we have the minutes of April 10th.
read them, I have no comment.
Did I send anybody a note?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I have just a couple then.
Alyssa sent those out, so you want to reply to her if anything. If they're just, okay, you can run through them and then,
I was just, okay, if you already have this corrected, then I don't know when I got this. That's all right,
I
okay, so.
didn't see one, but that's okay.
So, under annual town meeting warrant articles, Article 16, on the next page, the FC reviewed each article in the annual town meeting warrant, misspelled, does, W-A-R-R? Okay. Did I already send that to you then? That's all right, that's all right. And then, let me see, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs down, MH noted, the town meeting vote is for the water and sewer budgets, not the rates. KS noted that the budget is fed into instead of thar. That was it. Mom was an English teacher.
Okay. Anyone else with any amended comments? So I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
And Ken. CPKT. Any other questions or comments?
Who made the motion?
MC.
Okay, I thought you said Larry, so,
No.
okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed and abstaining? Abstaining, 7 to 0 to 1. Okay, so the only other thing is you started new business, but I just wanted to keep it, putting you back, you had there's probably in all likelihood one more meeting because, you know, the end of the fiscal year is June 30th. There may be additional reserve fund transfers and the need for reorganization. But that's usually going to be either the last week of June. Technically, we have until like mid-July to approve all the final bills for fiscal year 25, so we should be okay. So other than that, anyone else got anything they want to bring up? Comments?
I'll just comment. On the town meeting, there was a question brought up about free cash. There's a lot of comments from the town people. One thing that came back, one person said, why don't we give some free cash back to the town people? And I don't know if it was the attorney said we can't do that, but then if I look at the policies, it says free cash can be used to lower tax rates. So what's the difference between giving it back to the
think it's the
townspeople
scope
and
of the
lowering the
article.
tax rate? What's the?
The scope of the article, it was outside the scope of the article. You can't just make an article do something when it's intended to.
For that particular, okay, but generally, as a generality though, from a free cash, it can be used to
Well, they
lower the
used
tax
to be,
rate.
I think there's a member of the Board of Selectmen who argues every year that for a period of time, there used to be an article that used to pay that said to use free cash to offset the tax rate.
First
Okay.
couple of years I was on finance, there was a warrant article, and it was as much as $500,000 in some of those, that it was applied to the tax rate.
So if you go back, I agree, if you go back a decade or so, you'll see that it was an annual recurring article. It was a couple $100,000 here, maybe $500,000 at best. I would say sitting here today, that's a feel-good article.
It's
Hey, we're
always.
giving it back to you. If you look at, we're raising, appropriating somewhere in the order, close to $40 million. We give you $200,000 in free cash to offset that. It has a negligible impact on the amount of what your tax bill is going to be. And we use that free cash to give it back. We say, we got this free cash, we're gonna use it to make these capital purchases, because if we gave it back to you to lower your tax rate, now I don't have the free cash to make the capital purchase, I'm gonna have to go back and either borrow or tax you again to make those purchases.
tax
So we give it-
avoidance, not tax
We give
deduction.
it back in that fashion.
So Robin, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just in support of, I think it was hard for me to see, I think it was Mike that was speaking. In support of that, one of the things we looked at, I think it was last year, was what would it have cost us, I think if we did 250,000, and the amount of money we would have given back was less than what the interest would have been on if we had borrowed for a couple of those items instead of buying.
I want to say now, isn't the number like, it's $11,000 to take 1 cent off the tax rate? So, I mean,
And maybe we could work that into, if we are using free cash next year for some of these purchases, maybe we can work that message in of, had we given this back to reduce taxes, it would have cost you more in the end.
The last number I remember was 200,000, and an esteemed member of this committee called it a rounding error.
No, but at the beginning of the one year, we had like millions and millions of dollars of free cash that we spent, but one option would have been to do something, not 200,000, you were talking millions.
But
That
then
that was
when
an
we-
option, right?
But then when we give it back, and then we have to buy something like a fire engine, we have to
No, no, I
take it back
understand.
again, so.
And again, I would say that rating agencies would frown on giving millions back.
Yeah.
We don't have millions. We're down to 4 or 5 million. If we gave millions back, we would be below what would be acceptable GASB numbers.
And there's 5% CDs out there right now.
And on a bond issue, so we give back, 35 cents on $100,000 assessed valuation. And then, guess what those recipients of that $4 twice a year pay? Because the rating agencies said, not anymore. You're fast and loose.
Yeah, borrowing cost.
You got no cushion. And how about, we'll give you a letter B. Uh-huh.
So maybe we could just draw the whole discussion to inclusion one year, if we just have no free cash at the end of the year, and it's a non-issue, because we got nothing to spend and nothing to give back, and we'll just kind of see where things fall out.
Just kind of see where things fall.
You're giving me an ulcer now.
that's just poor planning.
Yeah, just another subject, 'cause I was taking notes on just the townspeople, what they were saying. One of them, a gentleman came up and he was talking about the surrounding towns, and this is probably, he was pretty thorough and seemed like he did a lot of investigation, but he was talking about the towns being 25% plus less than our mill rate, and he listed Brimfield and all the surrounding towns.
But the mill rate is not an important number. I mean, people like to cite that.
Yeah.
The number is the average tax bill.
Yeah.
That's the number that really matters, because the mill rate factors on so many things. Is, what's the value of all the entire property in the town, which is the denominator, and that changes by town. And then
I don't know if he was talking mill rate, he was talking about the tax, I don't know if he's talking about the taxes, or I don't,
the mill rate is the, whatever it's going to be.
Dollar amount just divided by, yeah.
$60.35 is the tax rate. That's
We're raising $40 million, in round numbers, $40 million through taxation with this budget. How much are we gonna charge you? We're gonna take your assessed value of your house in proportion to total assessed values, and that becomes your mill rate times whatever we're going out here. If you want me to cut your mill rate in half, we'll just go see the assessors and say, we're still gonna collect the $40 million, just double everybody's assessment, make their $500,000 house worth $1 million. You got a lower mill rate, but I'm still taking that same amount of taxes from you.
In addition, giving the money back, giving in quotes, is a political action. This is not a political body. We are not elected.
There was an interesting thing, though. I had, after the day after the town meeting, I got a series of emails, or I had an exchange a series of emails, because people thought the numbers I gave out about about our free cash position, where we started, how we spent it, and where we were gonna end up at the end of the time, were incorrect. But their numbers were off by at least a year or two, because they had us at our authorized, what do they call it? Certified free cash value coming into the year was 7.7 million, when it was really only 5.6. And so I told them, your numbers were wrong, and I sent them the actual form that Barbara sends us from the state that says, here's the certified value. I sent that along, and it's like, oh, okay. So you gotta be careful, these people, their numbers may not be accurate. We're right there dealing with the most accurate numbers, so you gotta.
yeah, I'm just saying overall, I mean, as far as listening to what the townspeople said, and some people came up and were mentioning how, and it's probably, I don't know, hyperbole or whatever, how our townspeople are actually being forced to leave the town because the taxes are getting so high that these people can't afford it anymore. I mean, so they're asking about, what's going on with free cash, what's going on with the other towns versus our taxes. They're asking, they're saying people are moving. I guess my point is from an overall macro perspective and from a, just how we operate or what we're thinking 2027, we'd be around the corner. It seems like, from what I gather, there seems to be a sense of people are a little bit concerned about tax rates and what it's doing to townspeople, and even to the point where, quote, that we were forcing people to move out of the town.
If that's true.
If it's true, as I'm saying, take it, I'm just.
I can jump in a little on that though, Ken. Sure. So certain people's property values went up different amounts this year, which was difficult for them because they went up higher than the median, which meant that through the reval, they bear a different balance of the total pot. But remember, our total levy can only go up 2.5% unless we do an override. So when people say, oh, taxes are going up more here than they are other places, they're really not, and they can't. In fact, many of the surroundings are doing overrides this year. A lot of my colleagues are talking about overrides. So a few people felt it more this year because their property values specifically went up more because by state law, we have to assess them at around 92%, I think, of assessed value is what we have to assign for their number. And the lake houses, for example, had been sitting around 0.8, and the rest of the town had been sitting around 0.9. So those people had far less of a value adjustment than the lake houses. So yes, some people felt a higher hit, and does this happen in certain like waterfront areas? You see it on the Cape, you see it in Southern Rhode Island, where certain home values skyrocket so much that yes, people, sadly, families sometimes are forced to sell old family properties. But the reality is, as a whole, 2.5 on the total levy is all we can do. So it's not like we're going up disproportionately more. We can't.
It's just the allocation of that amount to individual property owners is where it makes
Some
a
people
difference.
felt more than others
Yeah.
with the reval.
Like, I mean, mine went up, but that, I guess that's good because the value of my property went up. I don't know.
It's not the rate that drives it, it's the amount of the tax.
Yeah.
2 years ago, my taxes went up 23%.
Yeah.
The rate didn't go up 23%, but my valuation did. It went way up, so my taxes went up 23%. But right now, you can go online, you can find it on the website, or you can go into Ann's office, and you can see all the tax rates for the last 25 years. It wasn't that long ago, our rate was $19.44 per thousand. But the budget was lower than it is now, so it's all based on what are you applying, because the tax rate is what comes out after you dump everything in. That's what you have to charge
Back into
to
the
meet the
tax
budget.
rate.
And we're gonna mention exclusions too,
Right.
because you
This
don't
is
have
the
an
first
override for
year.
exclusion.
Right, we excluded the debt for the senior center project.
Right,
Last
that-
year, part of that hit the tax rate. This year is the first year where 100% of those costs are
Right.
in the tax rate.
So that's also absolutely some of what people felt.
Right.
But the general operating budget, to Ken's question, we are capped on the revenue, on the
I
levy.
think our average, I read this somewhere, but she has a range of 90 to 110% based on the numbers she gets from the state, that she can value the properties at. And I think our average was 92%.
Yes,
So last year, right, our mill rate, if we're looking at mill rate, 1593.
Yeah.
And, we go
Oh, you've
back.
got 'em all?
Yeah, I do. 2014, 1920, 2015, 1924, 2016, 1921, 2017, 1940, 2018, 1944. I mean, it's actually, even in 2023, it's $18.07. So the mill rate,
Yeah.
means nothing. It's the average tax bill you want to be looking at.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm just saying, in our write-up for what we put together, it basically also said, free cash reserve allows us to ride out projected revenue shortfall, but we also know that is not a long-term ability to do that.
And Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Ann Murphy do a presentation in this room that was televised and people were invited to explain how these
Yes.
numbers are arrived at in the process? and how-
yes, we did an open meeting for all it was particularly the lake residents we invited, but it was available for everybody to see. But we wanted to invite the lake residents because they had been concerned about what they felt was a disproportionate increase. And it was there that she discussed how it works and the fact that the people who were 0.9 or so moved up to 0.92, and she took the people who were in the eights, low eights, and moved them up to 0.92. So she didn't even go as high as she could. They set it, to what they had to set it to fulfill the obligation. And the reality is that because those lake houses did not go up as much as other properties did in the past, because some years certain style homes go up more, some years certain type neighborhoods go up more. There's a whole formula and calculation, not to mention if 3 of your neighbors sell their house for $1 million, your value goes up. So that fact that they were undervalued disproportionate to the rest of the town meant that they bore a greater burden of that. But yes, there was a big presentation on that, and we're happy to do that again and talk to people about how it happens.
And I know one of the numbers the state likes to cite is the percentage that you pay in property tax to your total value. And the average for the state a couple of years ago, when I did this, was like 1.22, and we were, in my personal one, was at 1.81. So that, we're a little bit higher than the normal state average, but that's something that the state, their little book that they send out looks at.
I'm sorry, Ken, were you finished?
Oh, yeah, I'm finished.
Okay. You were talking about things that were brought up at the town meeting. A couple of people had talked about the CPC funds being 3%, and why is it not like 1%? Is that a political issue, or is that something, who decides that?
When the town.
I'm not trying to get into politics.
So when the town decided to adopt the CPA, whatever, they chose to adopt it at a 3% level.
Which is the
And
maximum.
it's continued
You get
that way
matching, right?
going on, right? Well, you get max, the minimum step, I think, is 1%.
Right.
But, you can go as little as 1 as much as 3. We
Three is
decided
the
to go,
top, yeah, I think
when
so.
it was proposed, people proposed to go to the full 3. And left it there. Now, towns can go back and change that. They can opt to no longer continue CPC. They got all the value. I want out of it, they don't want to keep going, they can't afford it, whatever reason. Or you can go back and say, I still support CPC, but not at the 3% level. I'd like to cut it back to 2.5%, 2 or 1%. And I got to look at how you do it. I think it's a ballot, it was adopted at a ballot question, so you might have to do it at a ballot versus at a town meeting.
More of an election.
But the town has the opportunity to go back and say, we'd like to continue this, but at a lower level going forward, and put it to a vote for
Okay.
taxpayers to decide, residents decide what they want to do.
That was the other theme that
And you would never be able to go to zero until all of the borrowing done with CPA funds is paid.
So we could vote to go to 0, and you need to pay off any outstanding commitments that we have. So
What's a
if there's
comment?
enough cash sitting in the accounts to pay off whatever remaining debt we have, Barbara can hold that money and pay off the remaining debt. If we have no money left in the accounts because we spend all the available cash, but we still have $1 million worth of borrowing outstanding, she continues to assess at the 3% level until she's got enough money to pay it off, and then it stops at that point.
One of the comments, one of the citizens made at the meeting was, he'd feel a lot more comfortable if we use what we have in there to pay off all the outstanding debt we had. Because we do have, under CPC, a considerable amount of debt.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this, and Robin, I think I'm correct on this. Had there not been a borrowing aspect of Article 8 regarding the 634,000, that would have been a majority vote, not a two-thirds vote.
Right,
Yeah.
50%. Yeah. If that grant funding, I'm sorry, Peabody, if that grant funding had been secured, then we probably wouldn't have asked for borrowing and it would have passed.
And it would have passed overwhelmingly.
And that was the suggestion motion I had, part of taking out that $600,000 for that would have altered the
Changed it to a
vote that was
50%
needed.
vote, yeah. I'm surprised they didn't do that, propose that, but.
They did. again, I think the feedback there was overall support for that, but the way that article was positioned, if you truly believe you're gonna get the grants, you could have asked for a little bit less money and done it another way and had a successful outcome, so.
And by the way, the
Sometimes
parking lot
it's
is,
position and ask for it, you know.
parking lot on River Road is well under construction. They've been working on it for several days. Right down from just before you get to Farquhar. It's already
Exactly,
cut
that's
in.
me, from first leg of that, yeah, trail, yeah.
And also the driveway behind the doggy place there that
Yeah.
used to be, they're also working, I saw that's blocked off. They've been in there going around behind that too. So that work's well underway at this point. It's good.
Okay. Anybody else, any comments? All right. Great. Well, thank you all, and I would take a motion to adjourn at 7:25.
So moved.
Larry and CP.
Thank you, everyone.